Money, in itself, is neither good nor evil. It's a neutral tool that can be used for great good or tremendous harm. Yet, throughout the Bible, particularly in the New Testament, we find warnings about the dangers that come with wealth and materialism. These warnings aren't about money itself, but about the attitudes, temptations, and spiritual pitfalls that often accompany it. In today's world, where money is seen as a measure of success and a source of security, these biblical warnings are more relevant than ever. They challenge us to consider how we handle our finances and where we place our trust. In this video, we'll explore 4 specific dangers the Bible highlights when it comes to money. Understanding these dangers can help us navigate our relationship with money in a way that honors God and protects our spiritual health. Danger 1. Greed can consume your soul. Then he said to them, "Watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions." Luke 12:15. Greed is one of the most insidious dangers associated with money. It's not just the desire to have more, it's the insatiable craving that never feels satisfied, no matter how much one acquires. Jesus warns us explicitly in Luke 12:15 to be on guard against all forms of greed. Why? Because life's true meaning and purpose aren't found in the accumulation of possessions. Greed blinds us to the value of things that money can't buy, like relationships, integrity, and spiritual well-being. Greed can consume a person's thoughts, drive their decisions, and ultimately take over their life. It leads to an endless pursuit of more, leaving a person perpetually discontented and spiritually impoverished. When greed takes root in the heart, it turns money from a tool into an idol, something that is worshipped and pursued at all costs. In real life, greed might manifest as workaholism, where someone sacrifices family time, health, and spiritual growth in the relentless pursuit of more wealth. It can also show up in unethical business practices, where profit is placed above fairness, honesty, and human dignity. Consider the person who cuts corners or bends the truth to close a deal, or someone who continually chases after the next big purchase, thinking it will finally bring happiness. But the satisfaction from these things is fleeting. The new car, the bigger house, the fatter paycheck, none of these will ever fill the void that greed creates. Instead, they often lead to stress, broken relationships, and a deeper sense of emptiness. Spiritually, greed is dangerous because it shifts our focus away from God and onto material things. It can lead to a heart that is hard and closed off to the things of God. Greed stifles generosity, erodes compassion, and ultimately distances us from the true source of life and joy, which is found in a relationship with Jesus Christ. The Bible tells us that the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil, 1 Timothy 6:10. Money itself isn't evil, but when money is loved and pursued above all else, it leads to spiritual decay. Greed is a thief of joy, peace, and spiritual vitality. When we're clutching something tightly, we can't open our hands to receive anything else, not even God's blessings. That's what greed does. It closes us off, traps us in a cycle of wanting more, and leaves us empty-handed in the things that truly matter. Are there areas in your life where greed has taken hold? How might it be affecting your decisions, your relationships, or your spiritual walk? What steps can you take to loosen the grip of greed and refocus on what truly matters? If this message is resonating with you, make sure to hit the like button. It not only supports our channel, but also helps others discover these important biblical truths. Danger 2. Wealth can lead to spiritual blindness. Then Jesus said to his disciples, "Truly I tell you, it is hard for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of heaven. Again I tell you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of God." Matthew 19:23-24. Wealth has a unique power to deceive. It can make us believe that we are self-sufficient, that we are in control, and that we don't need God as much as we actually do. Jesus' warning in Matthew 19:23-24 is stark and direct. Riches can be a significant obstacle to entering the kingdom of heaven. This isn't because money is inherently evil, but because the comfort, security, and power that often come with wealth can blind us to our spiritual neediness. The deception of wealth lies in its ability to make us think we have everything we need, when, in reality, we are spiritually poor. It can create a false sense of security, leading us to place our trust in bank accounts and investments rather than in God's provision. This can result in spiritual complacency, where we no longer seek God with the same urgency or dependency as we might if we had less. Consider someone who has achieved financial success. They might find themselves gradually relying more on their wealth for security and less on God. Perhaps they used to pray fervently for daily needs, but now they feel those needs are covered by their resources. Over time, this can lead to a subtle but dangerous shift. God becomes an afterthought, and the pursuit of financial stability or comfort takes center stage. Wealth can also lead to a lifestyle focused on maintaining or growing that wealth, often at the expense of spiritual disciplines, community involvement, or acts of charity. The person who is always striving for the next financial milestone may find that they have less time for prayer, less interest in serving others, and less awareness of their spiritual health. Spiritually, the deception of wealth can harden the heart and dull the spiritual senses. When we rely on wealth for our security and satisfaction, we risk losing the sense of our need for God's grace and provision. This can lead to a spiritual dryness, where the richness of a life lived in relationship with God is replaced by the fleeting satisfaction of material success. Jesus' metaphor of a camel passing through the eye of a needle is meant to illustrate the near impossibility of a wealthy person entering the kingdom of God without a profound change in their heart and perspective. It's not that wealth itself is the problem, it's the subtle, deceptive power it has to lead us away from a humble, dependent relationship with God. Picture someone standing at the edge of a vast desert, holding a golden cup. The cup is full of sand, which they've mistaken for water. Though they clutch it tightly, believing it will sustain them, it offers no real nourishment or life. That's the deception of wealth. It looks like it will satisfy, but in reality, it leaves us spiritually parched. Are there ways in which wealth, or the pursuit of it, has led you to become spiritually complacent? How can you shift your trust from material things back to God? What steps can you take to ensure that your wealth, or desire for it, doesn't blind you to your deeper spiritual needs? Danger 3. Love of money can corrupt your heart. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. Some people, eager for money, have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. 1 Timothy 6:10. The love of money is not just about greed or accumulation. It's about what happens when money becomes the center of our affection and devotion. 1 Timothy 6:10 warns us that the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil, suggesting that when money is prioritized above everything else, it can lead to a multitude of sins and spiritual downfalls. When money captures our heart, it can lead us away from God and down paths that compromise our integrity, values, and faith. This kind of love can corrupt our character, leading to behaviors and decisions that we might not otherwise consider if our hearts were aligned with God's will. It can lead to exploitation, dishonesty, and a loss of empathy and compassion for others. Imagine a person who begins their career with strong ethical values and a commitment to fairness. However, as they begin to experience financial success, the desire for more takes hold. They start cutting corners, making questionable decisions, or even engaging in outright unethical behavior to maintain or grow their wealth. Over time, their love for money erodes their moral foundation, leading to a life that is at odds with their faith. Another example could be someone who is so driven by financial success that they neglect their relationships, becoming emotionally distant or manipulative. Their love for money might also lead them to make choices that harm others, such as underpaying employees or engaging in exploitative business practices. Spiritually, the love of money can be deeply corrosive. It can turn a heart of flesh into a heart of stone, leading to a life that is focused on self rather than on God or others. The love of money can distort our understanding of what is truly valuable, making us prioritize the temporary over the eternal. This misalignment can lead to a life filled with grief, dissatisfaction, and a sense of emptiness, despite any outward success. When money becomes our master, it's easy to wander from the faith, as Paul warns. This doesn't necessarily happen overnight. It can be a slow drift, where little compromises lead to bigger ones, until we find ourselves far from the path God intended for us. The love of money can also lead to spiritual isolation, as it often causes us to view others through the lens of competition or as means to an end, rather than as fellow image bearers of God. Imagine a beautiful tree, once healthy and strong, that begins to rot from the roots. though it still stands tall, its core is slowly being eaten away by decay. That's what the love of money does to our hearts. It rots us from the inside out, even if we appear successful or prosperous on the outside. Has the love of money begun to corrupt any areas of your life or heart? Are there compromises you've made in the pursuit of wealth that have distanced you from God or from your values? What steps can you take to uproot the love of money and realign your heart with God's desires? Danger 4. Money can give a false sense of security. Those who trust in their riches will fall, but the righteous will thrive like a green leaf. Proverbs 11:28. Money often creates an illusion of security, convincing us that as long as we have enough of it, we are protected from life's uncertainties. Proverbs 11:28 warns us that those who trust in their riches will ultimately fall. This is because wealth is inherently unstable. It can be gained and lost in an instant, subject to factors beyond our control, like economic downturns, natural disasters, or personal crises. The danger here is that when we rely on money for our sense of security, we can easily neglect our reliance on God. This false security can lead to spiritual complacency, where we believe we are safe because of our financial resources, rather than because of God's provision and care. It's a subtle trap that can leave us vulnerable when the foundations of our wealth are shaken. Consider someone who has worked hard to build a substantial savings account, believing that this financial cushion makes them immune to the worries of life. But then, a sudden illness, a job loss, or a market crash wipes out a significant portion of their wealth. The security they felt from their money is revealed to be fragile, and they are left feeling anxious and uncertain. Another example might be a person who continually seeks to amass wealth, believing that the more they have, the safer they are. Yet, despite their growing bank account, they may still feel a deep sense of fear and insecurity, always worried that something could happen to take it all away. This constant anxiety undermines the peace and contentment that comes from trusting in God rather than in material wealth. Spiritually, relying on money for security can distance us from God, as it shifts our trust from Him to our own resources. It can lead us to forget that God is our ultimate provider, the one who truly holds our lives and futures in His hands. This misplaced trust can cause us to miss out on the peace that comes from knowing that, regardless of our financial situation, God is in control and will care for us. The Bible repeatedly reminds us that true security is found in a relationship with God, not in material wealth. When we trust in money, we place our faith in something that is ultimately unreliable and transient. But when we place our trust in God, we are grounded in something eternal, unchanging, and infinitely more secure. Imagine building a house on sand, where the foundation seems solid until the storms come and the entire structure collapses. That's what it's like to trust in money for security. It may seem stable, but it cannot withstand the inevitable challenges of life. True security comes from building on the rock of God's faithfulness. Is your sense of security based on your financial resources or on your trust in God? How can you begin to shift your trust from the temporary security that money offers to the lasting security found in a relationship with God? As we've explored these 4 dangers, the trap of greed, the deception of wealth, the corruption of the heart, and the illusion of security, it's clear that the Bible offers profound wisdom on how to approach money. These warnings aren't meant to scare us away from wealth or to make us feel guilty for having resources. Instead, they are reminders to keep our priorities aligned with God's will and to handle money in a way that honors Him. Money can be a powerful tool for good when used wisely and with the right heart. It can enable generosity, support ministry, and provide for our families, but it can also become a stumbling block if we let it take the place of God in our lives. The key is to maintain a healthy perspective, recognizing that while money is a part of life, it is not the source of life. As you reflect on these dangers, consider how they might be playing out in your own life. Are there areas where you've allowed money to take a place it shouldn't? Are there steps you need to take to recenter your heart on God rather than on material wealth? In the end, the Bible calls us to a life of trust in God, contentment, and generosity. By heeding its warnings about money, we can avoid the spiritual pitfalls that wealth can bring and live a life that is rich in what truly matters. As you consider these dangers, which one resonates most with you? How do you navigate the challenges of handling money while keeping your faith strong? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to share in the comments below.